If you have scripture today, we're going to be reading from the Christmas story, the version in Luke chapter 2, the most famous version of the Christmas story. And I was thinking back to how we've all remixed Christmas. And I was thinking somehow back to, I was on the other side of town this weekend over where I grew up. And I was near my elementary school that I grew up in. It's in Smyrna, Georgia. It's still there, still ticking. Amazing. That's hasn't been turned into a historical landmark at this point. But amazing that it's still rolling. And I was all of a sudden had this memory. And the memory was my second grade class, which was the year I got to sing a Christmas Tree, or O Tannenbaum, as we do when we're young. I can see that no one remembers that. Anybody remember that song? Okay, a few of you did. You kind of looked at me like, I don't know what that was. But I got the job of decorating our door. Every door faced the outside at this elementary school. So there was an outdoor walkway, and all the first and second and third grade classes all open to the outside walkway, and every one of them was gonna get decorated in some fashion for Christmas. And I don't know how I got that job, but I'm okay, I got the door. So to me, that simply meant going home and saying to my dad, who's an artist, Dad, I need something for the door at school. Now, an ordinary dad wouldn't get that job. An ordinary mom would get that job. Mom, we need decorations. And you would get that crepe paper that has the little curls on it in green, and that would go around the window. And then you would have some tinsel that you put on there. And then you would put a snowflake on the glass looking into the window, and maybe a snowman, or, I don't know. It wouldn't be like over the top. But I said, Dad, I need something for the door at school, and I forgot to mention that I need it tomorrow. Anybody relate here? Any moms and dads relating? It's like, that's a kid's timeline, right? Oh yeah, by the way, we need that today as we're in the car on the way to school. And so I'm thinking my dad, I don't know what he's gonna do, but it's like my dad, and I wish I had a photograph of this. I'm kind of building up to it, and you're like, oh, I can't wait to see this. This was about 1965, okay? So it wasn't like, hey, get a camera, let's take a picture, that'll be awesome. It's in the cloud somewhere. I'll just search and find it. Siri will get it for me. There may be a photo, but who knows where it is. My dad comes home from work that day with this poster-sized acrylic drawing of Madonna and Child. Now, if you don't know what that is, just search famous works of art. And I don't know which one he referenced, because he didn't Google it at his desk, because that wasn't a possibility either. I don't know if he just had one in his mind from his art background and his art degree at Auburn University. I don't know where he got the Madonna and Child, but it's this beautiful, I can just see it as clear as a bell right now, acrylic drawing. It had some matte spray over it, so none of the kids were gonna touch it. Weather wouldn't affect it. The acrylic drawing wouldn't run or smear. And it's just this beautiful, serene drawing of the mother of Jesus holding the baby Jesus. It was like something that could be auctioned off for money, put in a frame, and put in someone's house. If somehow we still had it, it'd be in my house right now. Absolutely stunning. And then all of a sudden got put up at school, and there's the crepe paper with the tinsel and the snowman. And down here they have a reindeer with a real bell for a nose, a red bell. And down there they got whatever. We have this like unbelievable classic drawing of Madonna and Child on the second grade door at Belmont Hills Elementary School. And all the other kids are like, what is that? What is that? Who is that? And why don't we have any snowflakes or, any, that's my dad. And I remember that, and when I thought about it, I thought about how serene and how calm and how beautiful it was. And that's what we've tried to do to Christmas. And I don't want to upset the apple cart. I'm not trying to be the Grinch who stole Christmas today. But this whole idea that we have concocted is our concoction. The fact that there's a bowl of Chex Mix on the coffee table with just the right amount of garlic in it. You know, it has to be a little garlicky, and if it's bland, we don't really need it. And the fact that there's some wassail on the stove, and maybe a few snowflakes are coming down on the TV show that we're watching on television, because we're in Atlanta, Georgia, and they're not really coming down outside. And the Christmas tree is lit, and the lights in the house are dim. So there's that nice glow of the lights of the tree on the ceiling. And there's a fire in the fireplace, and a roast is cooking on the stove. And our kids are sitting nearby, loving each other and affirming each other and telling each other how much they love each other, and Sonos is filling the house with the sounds of Christmas. Could I get you some wassail? Would you like a cinnamon stick in that? Here, have some Chex Mix. I like your Christmas sweater. Oh, the gifts, don't they look beautiful this year? They're wrapped, they match. Everything is actually in a box with paper and a ribbon. We didn't do any gift bags this year, and we didn't just stick the Amazon boxes under the tree like we had to do last year. Everyone's here. Our son made it in from New Jersey. Our daughter's arriving right now. They just texted and got their bags and said the traffic was smooth and clear, and they'd be incoming in 26 minutes. Just close your eyes for a minute. Can you see it? That's enough. Thank you, Chef Lawson. Didn't that feel good? That may be your only moment, so I hope you enjoyed it. Courtesy of Passion City Church, peace on earth, goodwill to men. Now, back to our normal lives. Back to the real world. Back to what Christmas really feels like for a lot of us. And what I want to try to do today is resolve the tension, because the tension builds up when we feel like in our minds it's got to be what we just experienced and not what we're really experiencing. But that's our remix, not God's remix. Because the first Christmas wasn't like that. Jeff Lawson wasn't in the cave when Jesus was born. He wasn't playing nice background music when the baby came to life on earth. He was not around to provide the atmosphere that we all felt that made us feel so good about Christmas. And so if your Christmas doesn't feel quite like that this year, that's okay. Because the message of Christmas is not, let's all remix it into Chex Mix. The message of Christmas is, they called his name Emmanuel, which means God with us. And the God with us that night sounded a little bit like this, verse 1 of Luke 2. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. And this was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor in Syria. And everyone went to his own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, to the town of David, because he belonged to the house and the line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no room for them in the inn. Mary was expecting a baby. Now, the theme over today is great expectation, and we find that right in the text. Mary was expecting a baby. Now, when we find out that someone is going to have a baby, we say this: they're pregnant, or they're going to have a baby, or they're with child, or they're expecting. This is a common phrase in life. Once a pregnancy is in motion, then therefore they are now expecting. And Mary was expecting. She was expecting what? A baby. And apparently it was going to be pretty fantastic because she was a virgin. It was an immaculate conception. It was announced and affirmed by angelic voices. Surely this was going to be the greatest birth of all time. And it turns out that it was, but I doubt it was anything like what she was expecting it to be. What we expect of God, and I'll just speak for myself because I know a lot of you wouldn't be like this, but here's what I expect from God, especially if it's an immaculate conception and an angelic announcement. Especially if somehow it's framed in history as this is the long promised work of God. Especially if it's attached to some kind of a promise that is loaded with hope for all men. You would expect that God is going to begin to move in certain ways. And for me, a lot of my life, here's what I would expect. When God says he's going to do something, I expect that God is going to do it the way that I would do it. I expect, amen? I expect that God will choose the shortest distance between 2 points. I expect that God will lay all of his cards on the table because he has nothing to hide. I expect that God will seek my input and value my opinions. I expect that God will pick the path of least resistance. I expect that God will do it in a grand and glorious way. In other words, if it's Christmas and the king is coming and a child's going to be born and the government's going to rest on his shoulders, he's going to be the grand marshal of the Bethlehem Christmas parade. Except that there wasn't a Christmas yet, but if there was, he would be the grand marshal in the parade, not coming in and being laid in a manger. I expect it's going to be grand and glorious if God's going to do it. I expect that God is going to do it in the most obvious way so that people don't ask, what is God doing? Is God involved? Is God still around? Does God really have a plan? I don't know what's going on and I can't see what God is doing. I expect if God is going to do something, and it is an immaculate conception announced by angels, fulfilling ancient history and a promise for all people, he's going to do it in such an obvious way that everybody is going to understand. I expect that God will do it quickly. And I expect that in the process, God will eliminate every barrier, every hurdle, and all opposition. Isn't that what you would expect from a sovereign God who has all power and all authority in heaven and on earth? If God's going to work, this surely is how God is going to work. But this story, not like that. This story was managed chaos on every level. There's a lot of decrees. Before we even get going, in those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree. Now, this is one of those deals where you're like, I don't think so, because we've already gotten over the fact that we're expecting it. We've already gotten the family around the idea that we're having a baby, even though we're not married, and we have been faithful. We've gotten everybody on board with the fact that this is going to be a rough road to go, to tell everybody this is God's child, but we're in and we're committed and we're going to go with God. This is a big hurdle that a lot of us just really don't appreciate when we read the Christmas story because we've read it so many times. But the family finally is over hurdle number one. Our teenage daughter is pregnant. Joseph claims it wasn't him, and we're going to buy that for now, but we're not sure. And we're going to have to start working that out to everybody in Nazareth, and all the family members are going to hear that. And this is going to be our life from this point forward. This is a decision that's changing the trajectory of our family's life. Have you ever had one of those decisions in your life? This decision is going to change the narrative of our family from this point forward. They had already worked their way through that. When news gets to Nazareth, Caesar has decreed. What did he decree? Everybody's going to have to take part in the census. Oh, okay, great. Well, what does that mean? That means you got to go back to the town of your origin. Oh my gosh, you are kidding me. Not right now. We're in the middle of expecting a baby. It's miraculous. And the angels announced. They said it had something to do with the fulfillment of history, and it holds a promise for all people. Surely, not right now, we're going to get a decree. But it was right now. And so they loaded up a pregnant woman in the Lexus. But fortunately, they had Josh Groban, Christmas songs, to serenade them all the way to Bethlehem. Traffic was clear, roads were good. They just got in the express lane with their Bethlehem Peach Pass, and they cruised all the way there. And fortunately, they had booked in on Expedia.com and the Ritz-Carlton and had a suite so that when they had the baby there, all the attendants could be in the other room in the suite, and it would be a perfect birth. And a king should be born in the Ritz-Carlton. I mean, if you were coming to earth and you were Jesus, wouldn't you want to be born in a Ritz-Carlton suite? And so there they are on a donkey because there's a decree. So you're a virgin, you're having a baby, there's a decree, you have to go to Bethlehem, you're having a baby, and oh, by the way, you're not going to make it home from Bethlehem before you have it. You're going to have it in Bethlehem. Oh, and unfortunately, you didn't get there in time to get a room, but hey, that's cool, you can have it in a cave. I don't think when Mary was expecting a child in verse 5, that she was thinking that she was going to lay him in a manger in verse 6. Because she was thinking what I'm thinking. God's going to do it the way I would do it. God's going to go the shortest distance between 2 points. He's going to lay all his cards on the table, seek my input and opinions, pick a path of least resistance, do something grand and glorious. There's nothing glorious about a manger. There's nothing glorious about a cave. There's nothing glorious about shepherds in a field who are the lowest people on the totem pole, culturally and religiously speaking. There's nothing glorious about that. He's going to do it in an obvious way. He's going to do it quickly, and he's going to eliminate all resistance, hurdles, and opposition. But that's not what happened. It was managed chaos, even though she was expecting something else. So today I just wanted to ask the question, if we can't expect God to always do these things, what can we expect of God this Christmas? So if we can't expect that it is going to snow on Christmas, and we can't expect that everybody is going to make it home, and we can't expect that the family will be completely intact, and we can't expect that the roast won't overcook, and that there won't be any tension, and there won't be conflict, and there won't be difficulty, what can we expect? If we can't expect God to solve everything in the next few days, what can we expect of God? What can you expect of God? And for the answer to that, I want to take us back to the prophet. And I want us to read a verse and a text that a lot of us have heard all of our lives, but if you haven't, this is what you can expect from God. And we're turning back to the prophet Jeremiah. And we're picking up in verse 11. And this is the promise of God to you and the promise of God to me. He says, "For I know the plans I have for you." This declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a hope and a future. Now, normally we stop reading at that point because that's a great promise that a lot of us have seen on an Instagram post, or we've seen it cross-stitched somewhere, or on a bookmark that we've had from childhood, or we've quoted this passage back and forth. But just read it a little further with me. "Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. And I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back from captivity." So what we can expect from God, no matter what the circumstance is in our lives, are these things. Number one, you can expect that God has a plan. You can expect today that you're not going to be random on earth. You are not going to be stuck here on your own accord, but you can expect that for your life, your specific life, God has a plan. Now, the reason why sometimes we don't think God has a plan is because of all the above. He's going to do it the way I would do it. Choose the shortest distance between 2 points. If God had a plan, why didn't I go from grad school right into that first job in Chicago? Why did I end up having to go to San Diego and then back to San Antonio and then back to Atlanta, and then I was in that little no man's land for a little while? Why didn't God just get me right there if God had a plan? If God had a plan, why didn't he put all his cards on the table and show me the plan? In fact, I still don't know what the plan is, Louie. Therefore, God must not have a plan. But I love what Jeremiah said. God said, "I know the plans I have for you." God never promised you that you would know all the plans that God has for you. He said, "Just be confident that I know the plans I have for you." Now, all of us are in the same boat. We're all like, great, you having plans doesn't do much good for me because I need to see the plans, know the plans, understand the plans, have a blueprint of the plans. Plans don't do me any good if I don't have the plans. No, plans are better for you if you don't have the plans. God's plans are better for you if you don't have the plans. Because if all the news came to Mary in one fell swoop, you're going to have a baby, I know you're a virgin, I know you guys have been faithful, but don't worry, there's going to be a decree, you're going to go to Bethlehem, you're going to have the baby in a cave. Then there's going to be another decree because Herod's going to be afraid of this new child that he hears all these stories about. So you guys are going to have to bolt to Egypt. There's going to be a massacre in Judea. Oh, eventually you'll get to return, but then you're going to have this weird kid who knows everything about everything. And when he's 30, he's going to start a public ministry. And although that sounds amazing, it's not going to be that amazing because a bunch of people are going to like him, but a bunch of people are going to hate him. And then they're going to take him into Jerusalem on Passover week, and they're going to trade him out for a known common criminal. They're going to beat him. They're going to insult him. They're going to nail him on a cross. You're going to have to stand there and watch all that, by the way. You're going to watch him die, and you're going to watch him suffer. You're going to watch him take him down off the cross. You're going to watch him stick him in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea, and you're going to go home and you're going to weep all night long because your son, this mystery promise, now is dead in a tomb, and it's over. There's the plan. How do you think Mary would have felt if she'd known what God had known? There would have been no peace on earth and no goodwill to men. Not one day of the life of her son would she have had joy, because she would have known at 33 years, she would have to watch her son suffer the most horrific death imaginable. But God could have said to her, but don't worry about all that, because on the third day, he's coming out of the tomb. You'll get to see him again before he goes back into heaven, and then you'll get to experience the resurrection of a new church. You'll get to see the power of the Holy Spirit. You'll get to see the purpose in all of this manger to cross to empty tomb. And then you'll have people putting posters of you on second grade classroom doors at Belmont Hills Elementary School. It's gonna get so much better in just a while. No mom would have gotten past the point that their son was gonna die the worst death you could die on a hill outside Jerusalem. And so in his kindness and goodness and mercy, God said, you're gonna give birth to a son and you're gonna call him Emmanuel, God with us. His name will be called Jesus. He will save the people from their sins. Take joy. I have a plan. And I wonder today if somehow knowing that can reduce the tension between the magical Christmas, the one that we have remixed, the one that we have created. If it's not peace on earth and the fire's not burning, then you're not doing something right. Now that's great unless you're one of the families in our church that are going to be getting cancer treatment next week. And it's probably less important that the Chex Mix has got the right amount of spice in it on the coffee table because you're not even in Atlanta because you've had to travel to another city to a specialist to have a biopsy again this week on your 20-something daughter one more time. And so how do you resolve? It's all supposed to be wonderful and perfect, but it feels more like managed chaos. You do that by saying, here's what I expect of God. I expect that no matter what is happening on the outside, my God has a plan for my life. That is what I expect. I do not expect to know the plan. I do not expect the plan to be the path of least resistance. I do not expect the plan to be the way I would do the plan, but I do expect that God Almighty has a plan for me. I expect from God that God is gonna work toward a good outcome. Even if everything is bad, amen? I expect that God is gonna take all of that and work toward a good outcome. He says, I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Now, a little clarification here in the text. Prosper doesn't mean riches, and harm doesn't mean painless. Prosper means you're going to progress into what is best, and not harm you simply means my intentions are good. Harm does not mean I'm gonna prosper you and not harm you. Therefore, you're gonna get a Mercedes for Christmas and there will be no pain in your life. Pain is the way, oftentimes, that we get from less to the best. Pain tells us what is good. This hurts, therefore God is giving us wisdom, go this way. This hurts, but I like that it hurts because the fact that it hurts means that I'm moving from less to best. Or this hurts, but I know it's only gonna hurt for a little while because the doctor had to make it hurt so that I could ultimately get well. And we see pain framed in a way that has a good outcome. And God says, I want you to see your whole life framed in a way that has a good outcome. What can you expect from me? I want to lead you to the best. What can you expect from me? I am not going to harm you. Meaning, I am not going to leave you with less than the best. I am not maliciously gonna wound you. I am not, without thinking, gonna bring pain into your life. I'm not gonna wipe you out of my memory and let you suffer with whatever the consequences are of a broken earth. You can expect from me that I have a plan and I know the plan, and the outcome of my plan is better and not worse. It is the best and not less. It is to not harm you, but then he adds and says to give you a hope and to give you a future. Now I'm telling you, if you're going for cancer treatment this week, what you want to know more than anything else is that you have a future in the plans of God. That cancer is not bigger than God. Cancer is not in charge of your life. Cancer does not run the show. Cancer is not sovereign. Cancer is not final. Cancer doesn't get the last word. Cancer doesn't dictate how your story is going to be written. There is a God who has a plan. He is greater than cancer. He is sovereign. He gets the last word. He makes all the decisions. And in the process, the thing you can count on is his plans are good. The outcomes of his plans will be good, and the outcomes of his plan will leave me with a hope and a future. What a powerful promise in the managed chaos that was the first Christmas, and that may be your Christmas right here and right now. What can you expect of God? You can expect that God will be with you the whole way. Again, we say, and they called his name Emmanuel, God with us. They called his name Emmanuel. Sweet baby Jesus with us. No, that's the remix of Christmas. They called his name Emmanuel so that if you're in the middle of a divorce this Christmas, God is in the middle of it with you. If you don't know if your kids are gonna make it home this year, God is in the waiting and the hoping and the praying with you. If your financial situation somehow turned upside down, and on the outside, it all looks pretty good, but on the inside, there's an enormous amount of pressure. God is in the pressure with you. If you arrive at the cancer center and you prepare for the treatment or the biopsy, God goes with you, sits with you, waits with you, is in the operating room with you, is in recovery with you, is in every decision with you, never leaves you, never forsakes you. His name is Emmanuel, and in the managed chaos of life, he is with you. You can expect that from God. You cannot expect that he will always choose the shortest distance between 2 points. But you can expect that whatever route he takes you, he will be with you every step of the way. We've talked about this a lot, but Exodus 13:17, I just want you to put your eyes on it and see it. Because this is the beginning, really, of the promise of Christmas in Luke 2. There is a miraculous intervention. God's going to deliver his people from Egypt. There is a promise of the firstborn son, which carries over into Jesus in a manger, which carries over to the resurrection, which carries over to all of us who were swept up in the life of Jesus, being the firstborn again from the dead. And now there is a deliverance. And in the very beginning, we see what we're talking about today, because you would expect Pharaoh has been broken. Egypt's power has been destroyed. Millions of people now are headed to the promised land. What Abraham was promised is now becoming a reality, but you would expect God to do that a certain kind of way. But even at the very beginning, that's not what happened. Verse 17 of Exodus chapter 13, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. For God said, if they face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road toward the Red Sea. Now, this is our story. And it's God's story. It's how he always seems to work. I know that if I delivered you, you would look at a map. We took a helicopter flight almost from top to bottom of Israel the other day, and the pilot was showing us what we were going to do. So he's got this map of Israel, looked like the one we had in the Sunday school classroom. He's holding it up, but it's real life. It's not the missionary journeys of Paul. He says, we're here. We're going to fly here, 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 around through here, up through here, around this way, down here, and around, and then we're going to come back down this way, this way, this way, and this way, and this way. And you would assume if God's going to lead you out of Egypt, he would just pull the map out and go, hey, there's the promised land, there's us, there's where we're going. But he said, we're not going to go that way. That's the expected way, the obvious way. It's the shortest way. It's the way you would do it. He said, no, we're not going to go that way. Why aren't we going to go that way? Because you're not ready to go that way. There's opposition in that way that you're not quite set for. Now, there's opposition this way too. We're going into the desert. You're not going to have water. You won't have food. It'll be an interesting journey. But God never intended for it to be 40 years, by the way. He didn't lead the people going, hey, let's go for 40 years and hang out in the desert. That was their call that got them 40 years in the desert. He just wanted to take them on a little short detour so that he could do miracles, give them a cloud by day and fire by night, bring water out of a rock and food out of the sky, so that he could show them when you get to the Philistine territory and it looks intense, you'll already know our God is a God of miracles. So why has God led you the way he's led you? Most likely because there's bigger mountains to climb in the future. And he wants to teach you here in the foothills that he's the supernatural provider and that he will give you everything you need for whatever mountain you face in the days ahead. Now, a lot of us are still 40 years in the desert because we didn't like the way. We don't know why he didn't do it our way. We didn't know why he didn't do it the shortest way. We lost confidence in God when he didn't put all his cards on the table. And we're still out here frustrated because we didn't like the food, or we didn't want the quail, or we don't know why he had to do it a certain way. And not only are we missing crossing the Jordan and going into our promised land, but we're missing the training and the equipping that will allow us to do great exploits for God in the years ahead. And in this Christmas, I think for a lot of us, the best thing we can do is just say, I'm sorry that I expect you to do it like I would do it. Your ways are higher than my ways. Your thoughts are higher than my thoughts. I can't comprehend all of what you're doing on planet Earth, but I do have a baby in a manger who gave his life on a cross and came out of an empty tomb. Therefore, I believe you have a plan, and I believe its outcome is good. I believe you want to give me a hope and a future, the best and not less. I don't think you're trying to harm me. I think you're trying to mature me and grow me and strengthen me and make me a man or woman who can walk into the future and do great things in the power of God. You can expect from God that he's going to inject meaning into your story. I keep thinking about Mary because we've got her in posters outside second grade classroom doors. Shelly and I have a bust of her on the entrance table to our house. The cast of the head of Mary from the Pietà in Rome. And we can turn her into a saint and put her up there almost in the Trinity and forget that she was flesh and blood like you. And she felt everything you feel. Do you think she was afraid? Do you think she ever had a doubt? Do you think she was ever confused? Absolutely. Do you think she wondered why it was her and not somebody else? Why didn't you pick Catherine across the street? Of course. But what God did when he invited Mary into his story was none of the things that you would expect, but all of the things now because of Mary that we know we can expect. And what he did above all was inject ultimate and eternal meaning into the story of a teenager in Nazareth who could have just cruised through life and at the end of it had a photo album of Chex Mix and tinseled trees. Instead, she has a life of lives, a story of stories. She has a place in history and greater a place in eternity that is filled and marked with meaning and purpose that's so much bigger than her, that actually changed my life. Madonna, the mother of Jesus, changed my life. And so I wonder if A, we can resolve the tension. Would that be good? Doesn't have to all be perfect. Fire doesn't have to be popping just right. All the music, soundtrack, all the outfits and the food and the table, we'll all work towards that. I'm sure we will, but I wonder if we could, as we're working toward that, realize that's a remix. That's not really the heart of Christmas. The heart of Christmas is, doesn't matter what's happening today, God is here. Doesn't matter what's happening today, God has a plan. Doesn't matter what's happening today, God's got a good outcome in mind. Doesn't matter what's happening today, God's got a hope and a future for us. Doesn't matter what's happening today. God, if I let him, is gonna write me into his story, into history and eternity. And if I let him, God is gonna use my life to change the life of someone else.